Hi, I have created an application which is an Agentic AI workflow system. So it is a orchestration platform. So I have built it with use of MCP architecture, and this is the architecture of the system. So user will give a user query, and that query will be taken by the fast API, and the fast API will give that query to the orchestrator. So that orchestrator will find out the intent and what is the intent of that particular query. Based on that, it will invoke the tool. What tool we needed, it will invoke that, and the execution will happen and given the response. So uh, this is the flow of the entire application. I will explain with the help of the architecture diagram. Actually, this is the plan of the entire application. So for the user interface, I am created with the help of Streamlit, and I have created a chat interface. So user able to chat with the system. So user can give any kind of queries, and the chat history also available. And based on that query, the fast API will fetch the query. So like accept the query, and it will given to the MCP orchestrate. So that orchestrator will find out the intent, and then it will invoke the MCP servers. If the user query is for summarization, it will call that particular server, or it is for sending an email, it will call that particular email generation server. Like that, the MCP server will get invoked, and that particular operation will happen, and we get the response. And for identifying the intent, I have created a model for that. So based on that model will predict the intent, and each and every chat and responses will be saved in the database. This is the architecture of the diagram. I have for the backend, I am using Fast API, and I have used machine learning plus joblib for intent classification, and for orchestration purpose, I am using MCP. And finally, this application I hosted in the AWS, and for Dockerization, I'm using Docker Compose for Dockerization. So currently I have only created three servers like summarization server, sentiment server, and FAQ server. FAQ server is for question answering, sentiment server for analyzing the sentiment of the query, and summarizer server is for the text summarization purpose. So we can add as many tools we needed here, as many servers we needed, we can add here. So as as for now, I am only created three servers. So then this is deployed to the Docker Compose, and I will show you the code also. So I will share the GitHub link. So this is the entire application. The here Streamlit API, that interface part comes here under the UI folder, and here we can see the uh, the the portion for entering the query, and also for the history of the chat also visible here. And for the backend fast API, here I am created. So there are two endpoints are here. Like one is for the chat. So this endpoint will accept the query, and it will invoke send to the orchestration. And history endpoint will provide the history of entire chat. And orchestration part come here under agent. So here um the mapping between the MCP server and intent happens here. If the intent is summarization, this MCP client will invoke the particular server. Uh, MCP server will get invoked. That's how the mapping happens here. And When from the fast API, I'm calling this function, process query will be called. In process query, based on that user query, the intent will be calculated. This model is created by myself. I have trained the model and for the intent classification. So this is how the orchestration work, and I have three MCP servers, one for FAQ and one for sentiment server. So here I'm using Grook server, like Grook LLM model I'm using for the for sentiment and summarization. I'm using MC for the initial purpose. Now next phase I have to create the server for email and all those things. Currently I am created till uh, by the use of these MCPs, these LLM models. So these are the two Docker files. This one Docker file is for the backend and one for the front end. And with the help of Docker Compose, I combined both. This is the Docker Compose file. So here I'm building two Docker uh, containers with the help of this Docker Compose. And finally, I have hosted it in the EC2 instance and it is available here. So here we can ask the query. What is the capital? So we get the response. So Abu Dhabi is the capital of UAE. So that's how the entire application works. Thank you.